A very good afternoon to Joe Etchells, Account Director at Adgen. Thanks for taking some time out, Joe, to speak with me this afternoon. It's much appreciated.
No worries. Happy to help out. Sorry if you can hear the recycling bin in the background. Probably should have muted myself to start with.
The joys of remote working, which is something that I will definitely be looking to get your take on. Yeah, I think we've all had to kind of adjust to certain things like that in the last 12 months or so. Joe, you've worked for over 10 years now in sort of various marketing roles, including a hefty stint, obviously, in the higher education sector, and then obviously more recently going into Adgen. Maybe just as a starter, if you could explain a little bit about your current role and what you do for Adgen.
Yeah, of course, no problem. So I joined Adgen from De Montfort University, having left Leicester to go to DMU in a marketing role at the start of May 2019. So I've been there just over 2 years ago, 2 years now. And my role as account director is to be essentially the point of contact, the front person for all of our valued clients. And most of our clients are actually university marketing teams. So the transition was quite a natural one for me to make from that world into this world, whereby 85-90% of our client revenue is actually coming from our contracted and retained clients at universities and colleges up and down the country. So I certainly like to think, and I do believe, that it gives my clients a lot of confidence in Adgen that the person that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis is someone who's essentially been in their shoes and done their roles. Yeah. If we take one of our clients, for example, it's a very, very decentralized and devolved institution that has lots of different faculties and schools and departments, all of whom have like a faculty marketing manager or a department marketing manager. And I can legitimately say to them, I've done your job. I know the pressures you're under. I know the stresses and strains of your job, give or take, having done it at Leicester when you and I shared an office.
Yes, indeed, yes.
For years. So I think that gives them a lot of confidence. And in terms of what it involves day to day, it's overseeing the planning and execution of their paid advertising campaigns, which is about 50% stuff that we directly control through our digital experts in-house. So Google Ads, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, all of those kinds of things that we directly run for them. And the other 50% of the revenue that they'll spend with us will be us planning and buying third-party media. So a lot of the time that will be with sort of higher education media such as UCAS Media, Prospect, Find a Master's, Study Portal, all those kinds of things. But then you've also got the traditional media, out of home, billboards, obviously less so in a pandemic, but that's obviously picking up again. Traditional media like the Guardian newspaper or other bits of the higher education press or whatever it may be. So the role necessitates a lot of, I would say, relationship building with hundreds, maybe even thousands of different media providers, as well as keeping all of your clients happy and satisfied, and a lot of the time bowing to their last minute needs, which as a former university marketing person myself, I fully understand that those things are always going to come up. So I think it's really an ideal role for me, and despite the interruption of the pandemic, I'm still really enjoying being there.
That's great stuff. I mean, you mentioned the pandemic, which we will get to in due course. It would be remiss not to. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned seeing sort of both sides of it there. And I know we've sort of spoken before, this video will be viewed by students of all kind of situations in our business school. Based on your own personal experiences of working in that world, what's different now? What really stands out to maybe sort of 10 years or so ago when you went into your first role?
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of difficult because my first role, so straight fresh out of uni as a graduate in the summer of 2009, I got a job at Coventry University, where I just graduated from, as a sort of student recruitment assistant. And my role was to travel to up and down the country, although mainly in the West Midlands and in London, going into schools and colleges and delivering presentations and talking to prospective students in sort of years 11, 12 and 13 about what it was like going to university, and how we could help support the UCAS process. And it was all, it was fun. It was great times being out on the road. There was a team of three of us who we just graduated in the summer of 2009, and we were all kind of out on the road together and going to all the UCAS HE conventions and stuff like that. It was great. And it was only probably 2-3 years after that my role started to evolve into more of a comms role, and I started working with the central marketing team at COV, and using the skills that I'd learned in my, I suppose, my marketing degree. But in terms of what's changed, I think I can only really talk from an HE sector point of view here, but when I first started, there wasn't really the same kind of level of professionalization as there is now, and there has been probably for the last 5 or 6 years in the sector, by which I mean, like, universities now, and of course this applies to all of our clients at Adgen, they plan and execute every penny of their marketing spend, and it's all tracked. We can justify every penny of spend by the result it gets. It's basically what I'm talking about is performance marketing, where you attribute return on investment (ROI) or return on ad spend (ROAS) to almost every penny. You know, that there'll be some things that are kind of brand awareness things that you can't quite quantify, like such as out of home advertising. If it's not digital, if it's paper and paste on a train station, you have to infer results a bit there. But most of what we do is very much performance marketing. And I guess what's changed, coming back to your question, is that's very much the norm for all universities and all our clients to do now. Whereas when I first started in sort of 2009, 2010, we didn't really do performance marketing as much. It was more like, well, let's make the prospectus nice and glossy, and let's go to physical UCAS higher education conventions and hand them out. Let's go and hand them out at local schools, and let's hope that they reach the right kids in the right hands, that they flick through to the course that they're interested in, and they call the number and they ask, how do I make an application, and talk them through the UCAS process. Now all of that is done through the medium of highly controlled, highly planned digital advertising campaigns, and that's very much what we're at the forefront of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess again, in terms of kind of perceptions, and you mentioned kind of where you felt you started to use what you've learned in your degree. I guess that's interesting. You've worked in HE, and obviously you mentioned the role you're in now. In terms of kind of student perceptions, I guess when you were back as a marketing student, you had certain perceptions about what the industry would be like that you'd be going into, or what you could do. How different has it panned out from what was kind of in your head back then?
It's panned out completely differently, because I think when I was a student, I had no idea that universities even had armies of professional service teams.
Yes.
I thought that if someone said to me at the age of 18, I work at a university, I would think, well, you're either an academic lecturer, or you clean the buildings, because I had no perception of the fact that there was, it's not just marketing and student recruitment teams. You've got all the admissions teams, you've got the central planners, you've got the careers service, of course, you've got all of the academic registrars and their teams, number in the hundreds in some universities. There's this whole huge professional services operation which contributes so many jobs and so many salaries and so much tax revenue in the local area of every single university. This is huge business. So first of all, I didn't realize that, but also when I was an 18-year-old student and I was studying sports marketing, actually, I thought, oh, well, I'm just going to be the next Adi Dassler or Sepp Blatter. Actually, that's a typical example, isn't it? But, the kind of people that I'd read about in sports studies and A-levels, the people who made a success, sports marketing became a thing in the 1960s and 1970s with the rise of Adi and Rudolf Dassler, who created Adidas and Puma, and they were in bed with FIFA and the International Olympic Committee, and they created the monster that is today's multi-billion-dollar industry of sports marketing. And I thought, oh, that's easy. I'll just do this sports marketing degree and go into that world. It doesn't quite work like that, because you have to have, I think, certain contacts to be able to get into that quite exclusive world, or I think certainly in those days you had to be able to have the wherewithal to do unpaid internships, and I couldn't do that. I didn't have the financial means to do things like that. So I took what seemed to be the sensible option of a salaried role, 1 year contract in a university student recruitment team, going, well, I'll do this for a year and see where it takes me. And where it took me was, here I am sort of 12 years later, and I'm still in the sector and still loving it, to be fair.
I mean, there's a couple of things it's really insightful. There's a couple of things that I wanted to ask you on that. I guess there's quite a lot of pressure put on students. I always think when I'm talking to finalists that they feel they have to have this. I need to have my life mapped out. That's what I'm going to go into, and it almost kind of, rigidly mapped out. Whereas, as you say, in most cases these days, and it's perhaps a little bit healthier as well, is almost kind of, it's just what next, and then take something from one thing into the next. Would you agree with that?
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely spot on. There is no pressure to have your life mapped out at the age of 18 or 21 or even 31 or even 41. I mean, I remember speaking to both my parents about this when I wasn't sure what to do after uni. They both had quite successful careers. They ended up working for themselves, being, small business owners, and they admitted to me that they kind of fell into their roles. They didn't kind of plan to be where they were. It was where the current of their career took them, and part of it was luck and part of it was hard work. And I think what the evidence has been borne out in my own career, that you need a bit of luck. A bit of both. Sorry, you need a bit of luck, but you also need to work hard and almost earn that luck, as it were. Sometimes you'll be in the right place at the right time for a promotion. Other times you'll feel like you're in the right place but miss out and feel that it's unjust. But there's always another opportunity around the corner. I mean, I've been lucky to have a few promotions and a few step ups in my career, but for each one of those step ups I've had 3 or 4 knockbacks and 3 or 4 applications that I've put in for only to not even be invited to interview, or interviews that I've gone to as well where they've ended up selecting another candidate over me, and I felt it's not fair because I have everything that they're asking for. Sometimes you've just got to be in the right place at the right time. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. And you've kind of preempted me there, really. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned back in the day when you were a student and your ideas of kind of, Sepp Blatter, this is where I'm going, sports marketing.
Terrible example, I should say. I guess
I was going to say it's how do we kind of, for those marketing students now, whether it's first year, middle year, final year, how do you kind of place yourself? What can you do alongside your studies? And I guess this has been made harder with the pandemic. But how would you recommend to kind of explore, or what can you be doing? Because one of the things certainly I've come across in one-to-one appointments is maybe, for example, a marketing student who is keen to get relevant experience, if you like, but feels that the kind of the lockdown has completely made that impossible. I guess kind of some advice for what students could do.
I think, yeah, first of all, you're absolutely right that the pandemic has obviously put a huge obstacle in the way. But one thing it hasn't done is it hasn't prevented people from being able to get on their own personal channels and do a bit of self-promotion.
Right.
I would always advise soon to be graduating students, especially students looking to go into professions such as marketing, to start to expand their network on LinkedIn. And I suppose to a lesser extent the other social media channels, but really I think LinkedIn is the key one because you can really make some interesting connections on there. Obviously it has the functionality to not only post but also write blogs and opinion pieces. Yeah. There are certain ways and means of using the LinkedIn algorithm to get those a little bit more exposure. Joining groups and so forth and putting the right hashtags in and sending them to the right people who might be interested in reading and sharing what you've got to say. I've done a few blogs every now and again on LinkedIn. I probably don't do enough. Every now and again, when the mood takes me, I might think,
very good ones from what I've read. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's been too long since I've really done one, but I mean, I was thinking about it just the other day, really, because my colleague, who's our head of digital at Adgen, he did a really, really insightful and thought-provoking blog about the end of third-party cookies, which basically is something that Google Chrome and Safari and other browsers and apps are removing from a privacy point of view, and it's going to make it harder to kind of track the success of performance marketing and advertising, like I spoke about earlier. And he wrote this really insightful blog, and I said to him, this was maybe 2-3 months ago, that's a brilliant blog. I really enjoyed reading it. Let's go and present this to all of our clients and get in front of this stuff that we know that they're all worrying about, the end of third-party cookies at some point in 2022. And we did, and it's been a huge success, and our clients have lapped it up, and they've wanted us to give them more. And I think that just shows the power of an individual writing about something that they have knowledge and insight on that they can actually input. Because my colleague, when he was writing this, he didn't think this is going to be a step change in the way we communicate with our clients. He just thought, I've got a few thoughts on this, I'm going to jot them down. And you might not think that you have anything interesting to say, but when you really think about it, there's always going to be something that is close to your heart and that means something to you and that you know a bit about. And if you can construct it in a way that will be useful and insightful to people, people will pick it up, and you'll start to earn little by little the building blocks of a reputation for something that you maybe want to go into, whether it's marketing or advertising or anything else. So I think that's probably the first thing that I would recommend, because obviously it's harder to go and physically meet people. So use social media, and Gen X is that they're all on socials, aren't they? And if they're not on LinkedIn, I'd highly recommend getting on it.
Yeah, agreed. No, definitely. I mean, I think again, something you alluded to earlier, and perhaps it's been heightened with the pandemic, but perhaps there's never been a better time to network. Maybe the world is a bit of a smaller place in terms of connectivity now.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think when you and I were graduating, well, you're slightly older than I am, but that there was. I don't remember LinkedIn being around when I was. I mean, maybe it was. I don't know what's it been around 10 years ago, 10 years or so, and it's really kind of taken off in the last 5. And I graduated 12 years ago. I don't think I'd heard of it until about 2011. So we just had to kind of make do with whatever like external people, our careers people could bring into the university, and if we could be bothered to turn up, because we had all the clubs were open because it was in pre-pandemic times. we were having fun. But no, I think the opportunities are there if you just seek them out. And even what you're doing, you're conducting all these interviews, you're bringing people in from a range of different backgrounds and experiences, and hopefully your students will listen to a few of these, and hopefully it will be useful for them to kind of get them thinking about what they could do to give their career that little leg up. Because I think people who are interested in going into, I hesitate to say marketing because it's such a broad profession, but the part of marketing that my role represents, which is performance marketing, advertising and media planning and buying, that's a growing sector. There are more and more advertising agencies popping up all over the place. We're going to continue to create roles as we continue to grow. Our rivals will continue to create roles as they continue to grow. There are opportunities there. If people want to get into performance marketing, they should maybe teach themselves a few bits of code, maybe Google Analytics, and whatever you can learn for free off of YouTube there, because that's how I taught myself how to analyze things in GA. Read a few books, make a few connections. You don't have to have a particularly discernible skill set to go into advertising. You just have to know about the different channels that are out there, the benefits and the drawbacks, and how to respond to a client brief with a strategic and tactical solution for them, and how best to spend their money. And that can come with experience and knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, and just on that, Joe, it's interesting you mentioned there things like YouTube tutorials and everything. It's generally agreed, I think, certainly recruiters I've spoken to, that one of the main interview questions of the next however many years, I don't know, will be kind of, what did you do during lockdown? How did you continue to develop yourself? And maybe there's a case for saying, as you've said there's a lot of stuff that's fairly free online, where you can continue to develop and build your own skill set. And perhaps particularly if you've an interest in the areas you've mentioned, there are things that you can do to kind of enhance your CV, if you like, that sit now outside of that. Go and get directly relevant paid experience. It's not a loss if you can't get that.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree. And it, even the enrichment that you can say that you've done while the world was locked down because of coronavirus doesn't have to be restricted to what is absolutely concretely going to help me get a job. It could just be self-betterment. I mean, I haven't done this as much as I should have done or would have liked to, but I started trying to learn a couple of new languages off of an app called Duolingo,
Yeah.
where you can learn languages for free. And you start right at the start, and you gradually work your way up. And I've recounted some French, which I initially did at A level, and I started Spanish from scratch. And I've gone from knowing not a single word of Spanish to being able to probably conduct a semi-literate, basic conversation with a Spanish waiter. Um, so just things like that. And yeah, if you're able to say in an interview in a few years' time, well, I spent my lockdown reflecting on what I want to do after graduating from university and teaching myself new skills, for example, X, Y, and Z, then that's probably going to go down a treat. And if you can do something that is directly relevant to your career, great. If not, then whatever you do, you'll probably end up finding a use for it, because it comes back to that luck and being in the right place at the right time. And what's that saying? Luck happens to the people who earn it and work hard. I've butchered that
That's it.
saying.
It's something like that. Yeah, yeah.
By working hard, sort of thing. Yeah.
No, agreed, definitely. And I think, again, something that working with students during the pandemic, we've tried to kind of focus on the what can you control, in terms of, stories, negative stuff in the press about the job market, it can really kind of affect you, but you can't do anything about it. Whereas the kind of things that you're talking about there is kind of gives people a chance to actually take control of something, think, right, these are the positive things that I can do.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, you can only control the controllables, so focus on what you can do and what you have no control over, I suppose. I 100% agree.
Fantastic. It's been really, really great talking to you, Joe. Many thanks. Um,
Thanks.
some great insights there. I guess final thing from me, and I guess it's a bit of a cliche, isn't it? That advice would you give to your 18-year-old self if you could go back? But I guess for the students, first years, middle years, finalists, those students kind of watching this video who are maybe a bit anxious about going into the market or thinking, what can I be doing? Any kind of final words of wisdom?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. It's hard to remember like what my mindset was when I was 18, because I'm now 33 and it was 15 years ago, a lifetime ago. But I guess I was lucky, because when I was 18, it was 2006 and the world wasn't going through a global pandemic. And I just assumed, well, I'll go to university, I'll have 3 years of doing a bit of work and having a few laughs and come out. And it was, I guess, those days it was still a small number enough of people went to university to make a degree something that stood you out from the crowd. Whereas nowadays we've got 50% of young people going to university. It doesn't really do that anymore. So it's kind of hard to remember what my mindset was. I suppose if I was to give advice to myself, if I was an 18-year-old now,
Yeah.
it would be, just try and accumulate as much knowledge and experience as possible. And that doesn't just mean with regards to work and future employment, just life experience as well. And I think that can really help make you a rounded person. I mean, again, because you talk about that sounds like a cliche, but really, I think it does. Like exploring and experiencing other cultures, and given that you can't travel places at the minute, I would say kind of read books and find out about things, learn about history, how things came to be, and gives you new perspectives on the world and how lucky we are to live in a Western democracy and things like that. So I guess, yeah, just lap everything up, read things and learn from people with more experiences. If your parents have been lucky enough to have good careers, ask them questions, how they came to get into their roles as well. Maybe academic advisors as well. Anyone that you know who's had a half decent career, just pick their brains, because, you know, 2 heads, 3 heads, 4 heads, they're always better than one. And, you know, you can learn something off of everyone. So ask questions, find things out, and yeah, hopefully that's not too much of a wasteful answer. Like, hopefully that's of some use, but just find out everything you can.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, actually, because that's something that resonates really with me. It's so easy to discount your existing network. I think
Yeah.
it's fair to say that as whenever, you know, as we sit here today, if you like, and obviously any students watching this, there is probably someone that you know, or someone who that person knows, who can really give you the kind of answers and insights you're after. And it's worth just taking a second to think, you know, am I aware of these people? If not, how can I, you know, I find them, going back to things like LinkedIn. So yeah, really glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, definitely. There is always someone. Absolutely.
Okay. Again, Joe Etchells, thank you very much for your time. Some great insights there, which our students will look forward to hearing from you. I'll wish you a happy Friday, and have yourself a great weekend. Thanks again, Joe.
You too, Paul. Cheers. All the best.